Welcome to Bake to the Future. The wholesale baking industry mixes tradition and innovation to feed the world and the economy, generating some major dough while employing nearly 800,000 people in the U.S. We bring you a fresh take on the latest trends and issues impacting the baking sector through exclusive insights and conversations. Brought to you by the American Bakers Association, who will take you bake to the future.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Haley Blumenreich.
And I'm Katie Jewell.
And today we are bringing you a conversation with Krystal Register from FMI-The Food Industry Association. And we're looking forward to talking with her about her experience on the ground as a retail dietitian during the pandemic and some insights on how the wholesale baking industry can capitalize on the current trends in wellness and health and nutrition and see how maybe they can enhance their business.
And we've talked about nutrition and health and wellness on the show before, but since we're seeing it as a major trend during this time, we thought it would be beneficial for our listeners to learn more and hear from a voice with a new perspective.
And FMI is a major player in the food industry space in DC and around the country. They are the Food Industry Association, formerly known as the Food Marketing Institute, and they work with and on behalf of the entire industry to advance a safer, healthier, and more efficient consumer food supply chain. During the COVID-19 pandemic, FMI has supported the food industry with best practices and industry guidance, as well as important consumer grocery shopper behavior research through reports and trackers.
And I'm looking forward to hearing about some of those reports. And a bit about our guest today is Krystal Register, RS, RDN, LDN, that's a lot of letters, and she leads the health and well-being initiatives for FMI and is the issue expert on all health and wellness and nutrition policy, along with the operations and communication issues for the association's membership. Before her current role, she was a retail dietitian for Wegmans in the Virginia, Maryland, D.C. area for 12 years. And as a Wegmans nutritionist, her focus was helping people live healthier, better lives through food. There, she provided nutrition information while promoting health and wellness for Wegmans employees and customers.
Welcome, Krystal.
Hey, welcome, Katie, Haley. Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thanks so much. And first, we always like to start off with some hardball questions. The first is, what is your favorite baked good?
Oh, my personal favorite baked good actually has family ties. My grandma's oatmeal, actually it's called oatmeal chocolate bit cookie recipe. I had to do a little research when I wanted to make these myself. I guess chocolate chips used to come as chocolate bits. And in her recipe, the oatmeal, it was Quaker brand, but it was Mother's Oats. And I actually found a graphic that looks like the Quaker oat container with the Mother's Oat. Now, that said, I was known in my days at Wegmans to go take a middle of the afternoon milk and cookie break, same as Mr. Rogers used to recommend. Everyone did. And I would go get an oatmeal raisin cookie with a steamed milk.
That's awesome. I can't believe that we don't have that instituted at our office.
Actually, that's a really good point. We need to bring this up.
I mean, Mr. Rogers used to say it just would make the whole world better, I think, if everyone stopped for a milk and cookie break about 3 p.m. I agree.
All right. Well, we're going to talk to some people at ABA and we're going to see if we can institute this.
I love it.
And we also would love to know where you're joining us from today.
I am in my home office in Annapolis, Maryland. It's actually a guest bedroom. I'm getting new to this working from home office. So I am not too far from the FMI office, about 30 miles due east in Annapolis.
So in your intro, we mentioned Wegmans and FMI all in one sentence. And so you were still working at Wegmans when the pandemic started, right?
Yes.
So
yep.
Maybe we could back up a little bit and you could give us a little taste of your background as a retail dietitian. I have not heard of that title very often. So maybe you could give a little bit of flavor for us of how that,
Sure.
what that is and what they do.
Sure. So prior to being in the retail space, I had experience that, spanned from clinical to personal nutrition coaching, working one-on-one with people, and group counseling, that kind of thing. But landing in the retail space for me as a dietitian really was also an unexpected new adventure. And at the same time, I feel like it was a dream come true. Literally, the background and knowledge a registered dietitian has to land in the supermarket, really where the rubber meets the road. It was just so incredible. The opportunity to connect food to improving health and well-being. And my work at Wegmans, I was able to do that for both employees and customers. And, quite often that boiled down to creating sound advice and guidance in what we would call easy to digest tips that made sense right in the aisles. And, quite often I might have been delivering messages in the media or online. But at the end of the day, it was helping make that shelf to cart to home decision to improve health. And a consumer-friendly suggestion from a retail dietitian might seem simple on the surface. So something like, try a slice of whole grain bread with the dinner once this week, or maybe subtly suggesting a whole grain roll or a bread to accompany a salad or a soup for lunch. Really, a retail dietitian might simply be talking about whole grains, but the real connection between food and health lies in the many complex details that would always be swirling around in my mind as I would make a consumer-friendly statement like that. I would be thinking about the added fiber and the beneficial nutrients that really could help lower blood pressure, or help someone manage their diabetes, or improve their gut health. So, I loved being in the retail space as a dietitian, and I also had the ability to contribute at the corporate level. And that may be key to some of our conversation today, that there is a real synergy between health and well-being in the retail setting, between store operations and merchandising even, but also nutrition and pharmacy and food and health and the culinary piece as well.
Yeah, I really like what you said just now about how everything kind of needs to work together to achieve that health and wellness. And could you maybe tell us about how you saw as things evolved with the pandemic? Could you talk about kind of how your role, what you saw, how it changed from like pre-COVID to during it?
Absolutely. So if we flash back to mid-March, and all retail employees literally were on the front lines witnessing firsthand, it was stress and panic and the consumers in the aisle. And my top priority was our own employee health, encouraging simple reminders for hydration and snacks and breaks and meals as they're working long, hard hours. But customer service in the aisles was part of what I was doing too, and focus on helping shoppers find items. And quite often that meant substitutions for missing items, and helping them understand that there were certain limits that were set in peak categories to help with stabilizing supplies with this incredible demand we were seeing. So, and I must add, the baking aisle, as you know, was hit hard and early on. It wasn't, a month or so into this. It was from the start. People were just naturally grabbing literally items from the baking aisle. Another fascinating observation is often, Wegmans is a family-owned company, and we were all hands on deck. And often I chipped in to even help bag groceries to keep the long lines moving. And I felt like I was almost doing some boots on the ground shopper purchasing research myself as I was taking mental notes. People were panic buying kind of what I would consider some typical snowstorm items, if you will. And that tends to usually include things like deli meat and cheese, but bread. People know how to make sandwiches, and it's nourishing, and lots of sandwiches, I guess, and bottled water, but also a lot of snack items. And that often included baked items too. And some of them I'm convinced people had never bought before. They were simply just grabbing what was left on the shelves. And then, at FMI, we've been actively surveying shoppers about their changing shopping habits, and we published an ongoing series of reports called U.S. Grocery Shopper Trends, the COVID-19 trackers, and we've also just released our 2020 U.S. Grocery Shopper Trends report that looked at grocery shopping before, during, the pandemic, kind of seeing some of those same things that I was seeing firsthand. So in the very first COVID tracker report dated March 21st to 26, 6 out of 7 shoppers reported some change in how they grocery shop, and many people making fewer trips, spending less time in the store, really trying to get in and out, or maybe only one person was doing the shopping. And I think it's particularly interesting for our conversation to note that in the early days, we also saw a lot of firsts with 37% of shoppers were purchasing fresh bakery items online. That was the first time we were seeing that, really. And I think bakery items are one of those things you want to pick out yourself. You want to touch them, you want to smell them, you want to see them. So I have to say, my experience on the front lines, overall, shoppers were quiet and employees were very busy but helpful, and thankfully quickly recognized as essential workers. Both retailers and consumers really demonstrated this incredible, give and take maybe of flexibility, and everyone really seems to have adapted to changed times.
Those are some pretty surprising statistics. I think they kind of line up from what we've heard of our members and their e-commerce business growing so much. Mm-hmm. And I think that everybody's really trying to figure out how can we, not blow the lead on this? How can the baking industry move forward with this momentum? What are some ideas you have from the FMI/retailer perspective that might help us out?
Well, according to our research, we know that over 40% of shoppers say they've been cooking more of their meals. We know that since the onset of the pandemic. And we know from the continued popularity of ingredients, like I mentioned in the baking aisle, they've also been baking. So consumers really need to be commended for stepping up to the plate. They've shifted shopping, cooking, baking, and their eating habits. And we expect this to continue. 84% of shoppers believe eating at home is healthier than eating away from home. And that's kind of what they're saying they want to do. But here's the problem. We also know that the mealtime fatigue has set in. And I know we probably could all agree to that in our conversation, but people are tired of pulling together 3 meals, multiple snacks a day, especially with kids of all ages in the house. So just what you said, how can we help? Shoppers are looking for inspiration. Specifically, they want convenient, pleasurable, healthy ideas. And the opportunity for retailers really is now just to help with 39% of consumers saying in mid-May they expect to eat out less often once the pandemic is over. So they're going to continue this trend of cooking more at home, but that just means the need for inspiration and fresh ideas is going to continue as well. So a few specific notes maybe. I think there's opportunity for private brands. During the pandemic, 59% of shoppers have turned to private brands, sometimes when they were the only options available. Like I mentioned, people were looking for a substitution when something was missing on the shelf. And overall, shoppers have indicated they're more open to private brands, and bakery wholesalers and suppliers might have an opportunity to help revamp some of the retailers' private brands options to offer, new and enhanced product lines, or just to really highlight some of their favorites. Stocking up too, really supporting this consumer trend of stocking up. So we know that shoppers, they tend to have more frozen meat and seafood on hand these days than fresh options, but really helping shoppers take advantage of their frozen food reserved with bakery items that might help round out their meals, support multiple meal occasions during the week. I know for me, bakery is one of those things. I tend to buy extra sometimes, and I'll end up freezing maybe a half loaf of bread. And that has been my lifesaver at times, to maybe make a meal more fun. I'll pull that out and maybe we'll get creative. I'll cut it in a different shape. We'll, make our own homemade garlic toast or something and just get creative like that. I really think convenience is key right now too. So there's just this need for, when the fatigue sets in, we need it to be easy. So we're seeing more shoppers take advantage of value-added options that can reduce baking and cooking time. So developing product options that help save time in the baking process. And I think just being fun and creative too, kind of combating this fatigue with some positive light being shed too. Just that an example would be a glorified happy hour tray, maybe just including small pieces of a great tasting bread, like I mentioned, or fun crackers, with nuts and fruit and cheese and olives. It really can create a wholesome, healthy, entertaining kind of meal.
Yeah, I have young kids at home. They're almost 8 and almost 9 years old. And one of the dinners that we've been putting on the menu for regulars, I call it a sandwich buffet. And I put out like a few different types of loaves of bread. And I put out, just any sort of sandwich thing you could imagine. Right. And they get to make their own sandwiches. And they, at the end of the day, they end up with maybe a few slices of ham, maybe a slice of cheese on it. It's no different than just a plain old sandwich, but to them, it's like just this experience that they think is super fun. So, I feel you on that convenience factor.
Yeah, I think you just hit on something that could be one of the greatest ideas for the future with, in the fall, we may see more children home from school too, and giving them their own build your own lunch as a break instead of that normal, I think a visit to the cafeteria during the school day is kind of breaks up the day, but maybe thinking about fun ways to engage kids in their own home cafeteria, and the build your own kind of walk through line and see what you can put together for your own lunch, I think is something that would be really beneficial for retailers to look at too. How can we kind of merchandise that idea, maybe even?
And something I was wondering was kind of along the health and wellness side of things. What have you been seeing, or what do you predict kind of at the intersection of health and wellness, but also convenience and also eating home more? What do you see kind of like at the intersection of all those things?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I personally tend to be the eternal optimist. I want to say that we're seeing great things that could continue. So people have picked up some new skills that we would hope would turn into habits. We know, again, from our research that during the pandemic, over 1/3 of consumers feel that right now they're eating healthier, and younger consumers especially have adjusted how they eat with more emphasis on maintaining their health while they're at home. And older consumers, same idea. They're looking to safeguard their health with being very, very cautious, in their consumption and minimizing trips and waste. And that said, 1/4 of our consumers say they'd like to use this time to optimize their physical health. But still, this is where I need to maintain my optimism. Still, a lot of people believe that they're eating more calories while they're staying at home. From my experience counseling folks one-on-one, my hope is that they're not correct, that there's a chance that quite often folks don't understand how many extra calories are hidden in the foods that they eat when they go out. So by eating at more meals cooked at home, they might think they're consuming more calories, but maybe they're not. So that's one thing that I would love for us to continue doing some research and really see how this plays out. But in the meantime, I just think one thing that could really carry forward is the power of the family meal. And I'm not sure if you all are aware, FMI launched a program about 5 years ago, the National Family Meals. It started as National Family Meals Month. And this campaign challenged families to enjoy one more meal together each week. So now this year, we know families are having so many more meals together. But what I think is, and as you mentioned with what are people thinking about in terms of health and well-being, it's important to note that this monthly campaign, we now continue year round with our National Family Meals movement, because the best news is we have meta-analysis research that shows that family meals really do improve fruit and vegetable consumption, which is great for health. And family meals also improve family connectedness, which is great for overall well-being and family function. So, think this is just an important note to put a plug in here. Really, anyone can join the National Family Meals movement. That's anyone from a retailer, supplier, community group, an individual, a family, neighborhood, anyone. And perhaps that'd be a great way for your members to really support consumers with their ongoing need to get not just easy meals, but healthy meals on the table.
Yeah, we play a game during our family meals that it's actually like a deck of cards that you pull out. It's like conversation starters that we've been using. And sometimes the answers change. So even though the cards may be recycled, it seems like that could even be like a fun packaging idea for food that people regularly buy, like bread, each week have their own, like 5 or 6 questions you could ask at the dinner table while you sit around. So I don't know, that could be a lot of fun. One of the questions that I'm wondering, you talk a lot about whole grains, but what value from a RD perspective, and do you believe the enriched grains can also be a part of a healthy diet?
Absolutely. I mean, as a dietitian, one of my favorite, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, March is always National Nutrition Month. And every year there's a different slogan. And probably one of my favorites, I have 2 favorites from years gone by. And one was All Foods Fit. And the other one is Balance, Variety, and Moderation. And that said, and I think registered dietitians themselves are probably the best example of enjoying the entire spectrum of foods, knowing that literally all foods fit in an overall healthy pattern of eating. And that's what it's about at the end of the day, because we eat for so many reasons. We eat for social reasons. We eat simply for energy. We eat to nourish, but we also eat just to, for comfort even, and just to connect to each other and to enjoy, so food has to be delicious and nourishing at the same time. So really, yes, all foods fit. And certainly I think the suggestion to include more whole grains is because we know so many people don't. And it's not that your grains all have to be whole. It's just a balance. And I know I've even helped consumers kind of, how could you include a little bit more? Maybe make a sandwich. And I love that you said your sandwich bar, you put out a variety. So maybe a sandwich includes 1 piece of enriched flour bread and 1 piece of whole grain bread. And that's kind of a fun way to get there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Things get a little crazy. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you see kind of like coming up in the future? Our podcast is Baked to the Future, so we try and kind of look forward and see what's coming up on the horizon. Is there anything that really comes to mind for you that you would kind of tell our audience and the baking industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's just really great opportunity right now. We know that people are looking for, inspiration, and they really want that. Because we may see people may not be going out to restaurants as much in the future. So I think this desire for something interesting to eat, and we really did see that with our consumer research. People really want something interesting, and probably that is, a replacement for being in an interesting restaurant and ordering off an interesting menu. But that may lend itself to some great opportunities for the future. So, maybe this is a form of baked goods made at the store, but offered in new packaging for the shopper to take home, or maybe a take-home baking kit. I know a lot of people may also be getting tired of this baking experiment in their own kitchen, so maybe they will turn to more pre-baked items in the store, but maybe it's a continuation. How can we finish this bake-at-home experience, making it easy on parents, maybe just providing supplies to decorate a pre-baked item? There's also opportunity maybe to support shoppers' eating well goals with variety that really helps them spice things up. Like I said, we may not be going to the restaurants, but we want to step up. Maybe it's an opportunity to complement our made-at-home meal with a nice fresh baked item, and just a nice loaf of bread, or perhaps a small dessert selection that really would help complement that meal and make it more fun, bring it to life. And, I don't know if this will turn into meal solutions that are actually in the form of a bundle at the retailer that would include, a nice balance of nutritious foods, but also, well represented with the protein and veggies and fruit and maybe some seasonal items, but maybe the fresh baked item fits right in that bundle to take home for a meal.
Speaking of bundle, I'm wondering, so a lot of our members do make products that sell at retail, but a large portion of our membership also bakes goods for food service and, hospitals and convention centers and things like that. And when you're talking about bundle, do you foresee a move for like large restaurant chains making stronger moves into putting together like branded products that would sell in the grocery store then, as like their businesses are kind of wavering?
I guess I'm speaking more to the actual, the trend lately is there's actually a food service component in the supermarket. So perhaps, speaking more to that from our member side, the food service at retail component where, maybe they're bundling a seasonal fruit with a prepared entree and, a baked item, that kind of thing. And interesting. And I think it will be great to see what retailers do with this, because the time is now to think creatively of this. So, and especially with, we haven't really talked about it, but, online grocery spending is almost doubled. And that's just so significant. We kind of were seeing it rise before, in January, February, even it had gone up significantly from last year. But as a result of the pandemic, online spending doubled, in March and April. And perhaps there's a way even for these ideas to come from the retailers and expand online offerings with creative promotions that really help shoppers complete their meal. And it's important to notice, I think I may have said it, that shoppers were purchasing baked goods online for the first time. And that's what I've said. I was kind of seeing or hearing some of that through the e-commerce, that these fresh baked items, usually the things you want to put your hands on in the store, people were buying online. And there really is opportunity to keep this trend going in the future too. The idea of complementing a meal, even if it's an online idea, with a fresh baked bread, or even, like I said, a small dessert, just helping consumers continue this trend in the future with healthy, easy, and fun solutions.
Well, I like ending on that fun and more, positive, forward-looking note. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, we have another one with RD.J. Dummer called Baking is Trendy, How to Keep Up with Nutrition Trends, along with so many more with bakers, suppliers, global food strategists, bringing you a look at the future from all angles.
And you can find this episode and more at baketothefuture.org. And don't forget to subscribe to Bake to the Future wherever you listen to podcasts.
Bake to the Future is brought to you by the American Bakers Association in partnership with Human Factor. To hear upcoming and past episodes, go to baketothefuture.org. Bake to the Future is produced by Haley Blumenreich. Audio engineer is Blake Alphin. And A Slice of the Action is written by the American Bakers Association's Government Relations team.